So, welcome to Talking Off-Road with McGarity. I am joined with Ken Howard, the president of the Rubicon Trail Foundation. Ken, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me on here. I'm really excited to chit chat about the Rubicon. I never get tired of it.
Yeah, man, we have a great show in store. I have so many questions for you about the Rubicon. Everybody from literally around the world, they always talk about wanting to come and go on the Rubicon. And it's got to be the top number one in California among probably three or four in California that everybody talks about. Fordyce, Ducey Ursham, but Rubicon Trail is the king of the trails. And so before we get into the Rubicon Trail, go ahead and start with about yourself and how long have you been off-roading? What got you involved? And then we'll go ahead and talk about some of the other things that you do in your personal time.
Okay, sounds good. So my family has been on the Rubicon for quite some time. Even though I did not grow up as a local, I'm local now. I'm only an hour from the trail now, but my dad went on the Rubicon in the late 50s, and we recently just put out a video about Ambulance Hill, and my dad is in that video. We lived in Burlingame, of all places, and my dad was a mechanic, and he had a flat fender that he put a V8 in it, and we tell that story in the video. He put a V8 in it in the late 50s, small block Chevy 283 he put in it, and then my grandfather was on the Rubicon Trail, and my uncle had a flat fender. So my grandfather had a flat fender, and he had a Bronco 67 Bronco. 66 was the first or second year. And then my cousin had a Bronco and a flat fender. So when I turned 20 years old, I had been through the Rubicon in 1979 with my cousin Jim. I was just a kid in high school, and he was going with his buddies, and he's like 3 or 4 years older than me. So, it was a big deal to be, to be the little kid going on, with your big cousin. And he took me on us on the Rubicon, and we went through by ourselves. And then for my high school graduation, my uncle, who people that ran the Fordyce or the Sierra Trek will remember him from the 80s and 90s. He had a Jeep that was called Hi-O Silver, and his license plate said One Bad 44. And he used to do the trash at Sierra Trek with he had a trucking business. So he used to do the trash every year back in the day. So he took me in 1980, and I was hooked. And I told my dad that I wanted a flat fender for my first car. And my dad was like, you're going to wrench on it, right? And I said, yeah, I know, but when you're young and ambitious,
Yeah.
none of that was going to deter me in any way. So I did buy a 1947 flat fender, and it's out in my carport. I still have it after 42 years. I still own it. It's not the same. I wish I could travel in time and tell 1982 Ken, don't take out the horsehair seats and everything, but I did because I
Yeah.
wanted to take it on the Rubicon, and here I am. So I guess I shouldn't complain.
Man, what a great story of the history behind you and your family and all those memories. So over all those
Mm-hmm.
years, the Rubicon's changed somewhat. I mean, quite a bit.
Oh,
Um,
immensely since my first time through. It's not even, yeah, in some ways it doesn't even feel like the same trail. Little sluice box has changed. E Easier, but back then, my Jeep, I call it 80s hot. I had Armstrong True Track 31-inch tires. That was about the biggest tire that you could possibly buy. And that's what I had on my Jeep in 1986 when I put a flat V6 in it and took it out on the trail. I had 31-inch tires. Nobody had much more than 31-inch tires. So everything seemed harder back then. Now I'm on a JK and 40s, and it's like, take me to the Springs. It's not the same,
yeah.
but it's still the beauty and majesty of the trail can never go away. But yeah, so that's how I got interested in the Rubicon, and that's what's kept me gotten me to the board, and we'll I'm sure we'll get to like how I ended up there, but yeah, and you can see I have some guitars, so I have other hobby I have other hobbies. I'm in a band. If you went to the Sierra Trek in 2016, my AC/DC band played at Sierra Trek. And then I have a Leonard Skinner band called Third Helping, and both bands have played at Cantina for the last couple of years. So if you've been to any of those events, you probably didn't realize it, but that was me. So
Yeah, I was going to ask
yeah,
you about the guitars on the wall, and all of us who advocate and work in off-road, we also have other lives and personal stuff that we do outside of off-road advocacy. So you have quite
yeah.
a collection there on the wall, and so sounds like classic rock is your favorite.
Yeah, classic rock, and then Judas Priest is my
Mm.
so we actually have Scott Travis, the current drummer for Judas Priest, is a personal friend of mine, and he actually plays drums in my band at most of our shows, which most people he played at Sierra Trek. So I actually had the drummer for Judas Priest playing
Oh man,
ACDC and at Sierra Trek, and probably nobody knew.
wow.
But we're just friends, and it's people have poker night, and people like have golfing outings. They go to Palm Springs and play golf for the weekend. We get together, we get in here on a Friday, and we rehearse, run through all the songs that we've decided on, and then on Saturday night we'll play a show somewhere, and then that weekend everybody piles into my house, and it's just yeah, it's just a way for friends to get together and make music. That's it.
Screaming for vengeance.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Electric Eye is my favorite
And
song to play
I've
of
heard
all our songs.
Rob Halford live open for Iron Maiden many years ago, and man, what a tremendous vocal right there. So
I don't know for sure, but I think they're going to play at the Discovery Park at Aftershock this year, but I'm not 100% sure yet.
wow.
But I'm
Well, you got the inside knowledge on that, it sounds like.
yeah, they're in
So
England right now, getting ready to go on tour. So,
nice. Well, hey, let's talk about the Rubicon Foundation and
yeah,
who makes up the board. You don't do this all alone.
I do not. So we have 14 members on the board currently. We do have an open seat. We've had a couple people come to us with some interest in that. So I had to pull up my list to make sure that I don't miss anybody's name because there are 14 of them, and I'm not 20 years old anymore.
Hmm.
So we have Jeff Blewett, who a lot of you Cal 4 fans will know. Jeff is actually the vice president. Sherry Hawk from the Mad Hatters, she is our treasurer, and we really brought in Sherry because we needed to grow up as a foundation in terms of just chart of accounts and keeping all that stuff organized. So we got somebody who actually knew how to do it. So that was a big improvement. Amy Saygraves, also from Cal 4, she is the secretary. And then I have Alan Johnston from Naxja, and a lot of people know Diane Hawks from the Eldorado off-road page. She has always some great pictures, and she wheels
Yep.
all the time.
Yep.
I got Greg Castro from the Bay Area. He's on the board. JC Jenkins. If you went to the Rubicon from 2005 until about 2014 or 15, so 10 years. JC was the greeter that greeted you at the
Oh yeah.
kiosk
And
and
handed
handed
out the
out.
bandanas and
Yep,
the wag bags and stuff. So that's great.
yep. He volunteered to do that, and then the county took it over a few years ago with an actual employee, which was great. We have
Right.
John Arns on the board. He's been a past president. People know him from Rubicon Trail Partnership, and he's been on the trail. He's on the trail a lot. John Larson, also from Naxja. Randy Burleson, he was a original founding board member, and he came back when I became president, which was really nice to have somebody with that historical knowledge. Just great ideas. We have Ron Cannon that you might know from Jeepers Jamboree and Jeep Jamboree USA. Ron is a retired Placerville uh, uh, officer. Sal Sunzeri from the High Lows, he's on the board. He's our IT guy. I'm joking. If anybody knows Sal Sunzeri, they know that that is not true. But he's a good sport about it. And then lastly, Tim Owen, he works with the Forest Service Fire Vision Department. I'm not exactly sure. He's probably shaking his head right now. So anyway, but yeah, that's the current makeup of our board.
All right.
All wheelers.
Amazing. Well, we're going to talk more about the Rubicon Trail Foundation, how people can get involved and support and stuff.
Sure.
But what a great support team that you have behind you. So I want to talk about the Rubicon Trail. Some of the people listening may not be totally familiar with exactly, where it's at. It travels from one forest to a different forest. You've got different counties involved, different LEOs, sheriffs, etc. One of the misnomers, though, is a lot of people say that it's a county road. Can you clarify the trail and talk about all the people that you need to network and work with?
That's a that's a great question. So yeah, people often call it a county road. It is not a county road. It is a public road. So the Rubicon Trail is unique, and there are quite a few trails in a lot of the western states in particular. It's called a RS 2477 road, and that was a law that was passed in the 1870s that basically, it's, if you can go Google it on Wikipedia, whatever, it's revised statute 2477, and it basically was a way for roads to get created around this country because there wasn't, a lot of money in a lot of states, and so they just basically said, go, you the public, go make a road, and the public did, and they made roads, a lot of roads. And the Rubicon Trail, I always say, is unique because it's essentially open 24/7, 365, crossing the Sierra Nevadas from one part of this, from the western part of the Sierras over to the eastern part of the Sierras. Even Interstate 80 closes and 50 closes, but the Rubicon Trail, if you could do it, you can do. If you can do it, you can do it, which I think is unique, and that's one of the things that the foundation. We actually have it in our mission statement. Year-round access is part of our mission statement. So so the Rubicon Trail starts. Well, the historical start of it is around Wetware Springs, and that's important for the RS 2477 portion because that is part of the revised statute 2477. And then in 1886, Bob Sweeney, who was the president of the Jeepers Jamboree, his, I'm probably messing this up, but I believe it's his great, great, great grandfather, three greats, maybe four. He's probably laughing too if he's watching this, when he watches this. Was a board of supervisor, and they declared that the Rubicon Trail was a public road, and they recognized it as a road. And that was important because when the Forest Service came in the early 1900s, we had BLM. People don't realize BLM is to manage mining rights on public lands, and the Forest Service was originally created to manage logging contracts on public land. Counting, pine cones and emptying bathrooms at campgrounds was not their original mission for them. And so those lands, those roads got taken over by them, and we can get into that later. But the fact that it's a public road is because the El Dorado County recognized it as such in the 1880s. They reaffirmed it in the late 80s, late 89, I believe it was. And so that's why the Forest Service on the El Dorado side is not involved. But as for like who's involved with the trail, you have Wentworth Springs is privately owned. Rubicon Trail Foundation owns part of the Rubicon Trail on Indian Trail headed down to Buck Island Lake. You have RTP that owns the bowl. You have El Dorado County that owns the trail up to the Placer County line. You have Placer County involved. You have Tahoe National Forest on that side. You have the Lake Tahoe Basin Management Unit, the LTBMU, that basically is from about the first 2 miles before you get to Miller Lake. That is the LTBMU. They have that part of it. So you have a lot of agencies and a lot of moving parts as far as getting stuff done. It makes it a challenge for sure.
Oh, okay. And then it also goes across the PCT, the Pacific Crest Trail, and
Yeah,
that's been a hot topic here lately because they're trying to get this. They want this buffer on both sides of the trail. I would imagine you guys are heavily involved in that conversation.
no, actually, I mean, I know about that, but no, there's because the trail supersedes the Pacific Crest Trail in terms of legal legal entities. So I'm, being a public RS 2477 road going back that far
Yeah,
is extremely beneficial for the Rubicon Trail being open as it is today. I can't stress that enough. And that's one thing that the foundation, some people might not agree with it because they don't may not understand it fully, but we fight very hard to protect that status because if it was a county road, it would fall under the DOT. It does not fall under the DOT. The county cannot use DOT road funds on it because it's not a county road. That's why they use OHMBR green sticker funds for maintenance and helicopter flights and rock drops and all that stuff. That is why that is the way it is. So it's extremely important that that is preserved, and we fight very hard for that.
right on, right on. So over the years, I know there's been a lot of changes happening on the Rubicon Trail. We can't get into all of them, but one in
Yeah.
particular, you mentioned Little Sluice. I know they blew up a lot of boulders. What's it been? Maybe 10, 15 years? I don't know, 10 years ago or so.
Yeah, it's
Made it
yeah, it
made it
was
almost a highway through there. But
and
off,
initially, but you know what? Nature and tires have a miraculous way of moving things around. It's not the same
yeah,
little. The little sluice was a lot easier. It became a lot harder. We all know what happened in the '90s, and with all the people that would come out there and watch the, I don't know, not carnage, but just watch all the action of people trying to go through there.
yeah,
Um, and honestly, that was it turned out to be a good thing, honestly, in the long run. Always try to look, Monty Python. I always try to look on
yeah,
the bright side of life. Uh, that happening really got El Dorado County involved because they knew what they had in terms of its economic impact to the county, and they knew that if environmental reasons were to shut it down, that would be a huge detriment to the county. So it really woke them up and changed a lot of things very quickly. And just for clarity, they didn't blow them up. They used air to crack the rocks, and they
okay,
cracked, I think, 3 total. And we were probably also a misnomer. The foundation was not for it. We submitted letters. We had people calling. Bob Sweeney was calling his dad to tell him, who was on the board, don't do it. We felt that the problems and issues there could have been mitigated in other ways. But like I said, time changes, and the little sluice box is not the same little sluice
yeah,
box it was after the rocks were cracked. So
right. Well,
just wait.
I'd be remiss if I don't mention Soup Bowl because that if you're coming in from Wentworth Springs or Loon Lake, there's some key destinations, but one being the Soup Bowl. So uh, not going into the full detail, but how did it get its name?
I wish I knew because if you follow the Rubicon Trail Foundation channel, there is a series that we've started called "The History of the Rubicon" and how did it get its name. And I'm working my way for next summer, and I'm trying to find out how exactly it got its name
Okay.
because
So
there's
anybody
something.
listening, if they know how the real
Yeah,
story, they get a hold
call
of Ken
me.
Hauer with Rubicon Trail Foundation. Okay. Well,
I'd love to hear how it got its name, because there's
man,
some good ones. Like whale bones is another one that's really unusual. People don't know. An Indian trail was really not an Indian trail, but that's the name of it, or the slabs, as people, as you're going down towards
yeah,
Buck Island.
yeah.
And that's part of Jeepers Jamboree lore, and we know the story, and we'll be
All right.
telling that one on the
Well, you're
website
jumping
for all
ahead.
the
You're jumping
YouTube.
ahead on the trail on me.
Sorry.
So, Spider Lake is right next to the little sluice. For
Yeah.
years, you used to be able to hang out there and watch the show, and just walk over and take a dip into, or drive over to Spider Lake. What changed?
Yeah.
Because now it's off limits.
Yeah, so at the time, and it still is, it's a private property. It's owned by, they're called the Rubicon Trail Partnership, and there's been a variety of owners. Mark Smith was the original person that Bohemian Lumber owned it before that. And Mark Smith created Rubicon Trail Partnership. There are 6 partners, and they really are friends of the trail. So, but you have to understand, imagine if somebody was pooping in your yard and it was condemned and you weren't able to go to your house because somebody was pooping in your front yard. And that's essentially what was going on. And it wasn't, nobody was, I don't think anybody was trying to cause problems, but when you have that many people in an area where there's not any, there at the time there weren't any bathrooms, it's granite, there's really no place to dig a hole. So people were literally building these little boxes, and they would fill them up, and they would lift up the box, leave what was behind, and they would move the box over, and they would wash, rinse, repeat. And so that area was condemned, actually, in the early 2000s, and a group of people, volunteers, including Jack Sweeney from the Board of Supervisors, went in, and they removed 700 pounds of human feces there. It wasn't a joke in terms of the volume was incredible, and it just couldn't sustain itself. And the partners decided that they just couldn't allow people to go there anymore, and I don't blame them. They let them do it. They caused it their, literally their driveway to be shut down. They weren't allowed to go to their own property because of it. So I what are you going to say?
Right. Okay. So when people leave Spider Lake, they are now heading towards the slabs, and when they get to that area, it's kind of important, especially for the Rubicon Trail Foundation. Why don't you talk about the importance of that vicinity?
Sure. Yeah. So in 2010, the foundation purchased, at the time, we purchased 316 acres from Mark Smith and Patty Smith. Um, the foundation, one of the reasons that Panamint Valley, if anybody remembers Panamint Valley, which I know that was Marlin Crawler's favorite, and we can segue into that later on, but that was Marlin's favorite trail. That is an RS-2477 road. It was the
Oh,
same as the Rubicon Trail, but
okay.
it closed. And the reason it closed is because nobody had legal standing.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, mhm. So
Huh.
as part of our, we actually have a lawyer who has been a part of the foundation for years. He does most of his work pro bono. He doesn't charge any of us, which is great. But he is a land use attorney. His name's Jesse Barton, and Jesse basically told the foundation, "You need to buy property." So Scott Johnston was the president at the time, and he sat down with Mark Smith for breakfast in Georgetown, and they hashed out a deal. This was before I joined the board. I can assure you, we didn't have the money to buy it. Mark Smith basically did it, good old boy and a handshake. Um, but we obviously have paid it off, and then we did a land swap with RTP because RTP owned the section before, and we did a land swap with them. We gave them 60 acres on a sliver, and then they gave us 30 back. And but that 30 let the Rubicon Trail Foundation actually own the trail.
Right,
So
because if anything happens, you can claim that you're actually being harmed. And
yeah,
if you're not a landowner, then you
you're
can't
not harmed.
claim you're not harmed. Yeah.
Yep, it's a really big legal reason why this foundation owns the property. Now, the side benefit of that is we built a road. It's 1.1 miles long that goes down into a main kind of camping area there. You can look up and see the slabs. It's kind of nice to sit there with a cocktail in your hand and wonder what's going on as you see people going around or maybe not moving for a few hours. Um, but uh, so we built 1.1 mile, and then we have another road that's called the Granite View Loop. It's 2.2 miles that goes around. So it's 4.6 miles to get to the turn to go to our property, and it's another 4.5 miles of driving around that you can do to get back to the start.
Wow.
So essentially doubles the Rubicon from that point, and it's obviously free of charge. There's no, it's just open. Go there, go camp, go have fun. It's a completely different experience if you go find some place and camp there. You can't. If you get on the other side of the hill, you're on the Rubicon Spring side. You're actually on the cliff that overlooks the rope swing. So,
Wow.
yeah, if you're young of foot, you can take a gander and hike down, but you won't see hardly anybody over the course of a weekend. It's a different experience, and somebody who's been on the Rubicon for over 40 years, it's kind of nice to be able to do something different and see something new and not hear anybody, maybe not hear anybody the whole entire weekend. It's on the Rubicon, that's hard to do.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so before, right there around your property at that Y, there's a really challenging trail off that you can go down instead of going the slabs if you're adventurous. So you can go down Old
Yeah,
Sluice,
yeah.
and
It's
those are some
it's
pretty big ledges and drops going down.
It's very challenging. You better have your big boy pants on when you go down that. It's an optional line. So I mentioned we have a historical videos and how something got its name. So I'll give a little teaser. So the trail originally went down Old Sluice. That's the way it went. And there was a Jeepers Jamboree. Eugene Chappie, which Highway 193 near Cool is named after Eugene Chappie, and then Chappie Rock or Bronco Rock is the rock that you dropped off there at the entrance of Old Sluice. Eugene was a rock roller for the Jeepers Jamboree, and he was there, and there was a huge traffic jam, and it was really making the Arnolds, Kevin Arnold's dad, Mike Arnold, very mad. So if everybody knows Arnold's Rock is a named part of the trail. Just before you start dropping down, there's a restroom right there, Arnold's Rock bathroom.
Okay.
And
Yep.
there was the backup was affecting Mike's obstacle, and they were furious, and they marched down to go to Eugene Chappie to tell him to get things moving. I'm sure their words were way more colorful than that. And Eugene said, they're gonna go down the regular part of the trail, and that's that. And Mike said, this is the regular part of the trail, pointing to the slabs, which is pretty much what it was called before this. And he said, this is the Indian trail. This is the original one. This is where the Indians went down to go down there. And Eugene was like, really? Oh, okay, I'll send them down that way and they can go down that way. And so that's how it got the name Indian Trail that we all hear today. Was that little incident on a Jeepers
Wow,
Jamboree.
man. And
Yeah.
I've been down the slabs in my little Willies it was on 35s and 82 something inch wheelbase, and it's scary. Side cam, off camber, you feel like you're gonna tip
Yeah.
over. You're not,
Yeah.
but it sure feels like it. And then I've got friends with the big lifted buggies that have a lot of body roll on theirs, and
Right.
they're so afraid of going down the slabs or coming back up the slabs.
My friend Jack, he's the actually guitar player in my band. He and I have been friends since we were young kids. He actually flopped his Jeep on Indian Trail. He dropped into a hole and over she went. He's got a CJ7.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, that
So
got his attention.
it did. And of course, now it's been, 10 over 10 years. Every time we go by, yeah, that's where I flopped the Jeep over. Yeah, I know, dude. I know exactly where it is.
So after leaving there, you get into Buck Island, and a lot of people camp there.
Yeah, very
It's
popular.
usually, yeah, it's a very popular place to stop. There's a dam there, and there's actually an
Yeah.
overflow and a tunnel that takes water all the way to Loon Lake, right?
Yeah. So actually, so yeah, so the Army Corps of Engineers came in and they built a dam. There are three lakes in a row, which a lot of people don't realize. The first one is Rubicon Reservoir. There's a dam there. And then that water rolls down into Rockbound, which is the lake in between Buck Island Lake and Rubicon Reservoir. Then the water comes down into Buck Island Lake, and then the Army Corps engineers built a dam there, and they bored a tunnel all the way to Loon Lake, so the water can go through to Loon Lake. And then a lot of people don't realize that the 1,700 feet underneath Loon Lake, almost like a bathtub drain, there is a power plant. You've seen the concrete building there as you're coming into Loon Lake on your right hand side. There is a power plant 1,700 feet underneath the lake. And so that water comes down through there and then makes some power for SMUD and heads down a bunch of, and eventually ends up in the Delta. So it's all connected.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to do a video on it because John Arns' son works there. We won't be able to go down there because of, unfortunately, due to 9/11, they don't allow anybody down there anymore. But we do have some photos that John took, so we'll be doing a video on that in the future.
Wow. That is
Yeah,
interesting. So has there
yeah.
been anybody that's gone down the tunnel all the way to on a river raft or a inner tube?
Oh yeah, yeah. You can't do it anymore. They have it all blocked off. But way back in the 80s, yeah, you could. If the water was at the right height, you could take a little rubber raft and you could go all the way to Loon Lake.
Wow. That must have been
Yeah,
a little scary too, because it's pretty dark when you get down in the middle of
it,
it.
it is.
Well, how fun.
Allegedly,
Allegedly,
Smud.
allegedly. And so they've got pit toilets. Are they outhouses or pit toilets? They're
No,
right
we
there at
have
Buck
we
Island.
no. There are quite a few toilets at Buck Island, and they all get pumped by the county. So the Rubicon Trail Foundation, almost all the toilets that you see on the trail, other than a couple of newer ones that SMUD has put in, all of those trails were built by the Rubicon Trail Foundation.
Okay.
And we pumped those toilets for 7 years. I think it was we know it because we keep logs. It was like 447 toilets were pumped mostly by John Arns. So I defy somebody to say that they've done more for the Rubicon Trail to keep it open than somebody who pumped almost 500 toilets, volunteered, not paid. I mean, the foundation got reimbursed for it, but John did it for free for 7 years. And there was only a couple times where somebody, because of the way insurance works, you had to be on the board in order to do it. So that's why we never. And then the county, of course, built a truck, and now Brian Betancourt from the county does it, which is awesome. Can't even,
Yeah.
we don't want to be in the toilet pumping
So
business.
that
It
kind
was,
of that makes me think of something. So I know there's monitors like you that there's people that volunteer and monitor the trail. They have ham radios. They're communicating back somewhere because when we've been at Buck Island, we've seen and walked up and somebody would pull up in their Jeep, jump out, replenish the bathroom with toilet paper, make sure it's all
yep.
clean. Then they would radio somebody. So how many volunteers take part in that? And then, who are they radioing back to?
So you actually bring up a really good point. So their ham radio is a really big thing on the Rubicon Trail because there's virtually no cell service. There's one spot before you get to Soup Bowl, actually the benchmark, it's called that area, where you can get cell service. So the Rubicon Trail Foundation actually built the ham radio. It's a vault. It's a concrete vault that was built on the top of a hill right by Spider Lake, and we pay for it. We fund it. We recently put a GMRS repeater in there for the people who have GRMS radios because they're getting very popular. They
Right.
can't call out to Sacramento like the ham radio people can, but the foundation personally, Barb Arns and John Arns teach a ham class, and they have given license to over 700 users at this point. It was so many that the FCC thought it was a scam, and they sent a secret person into our ham radio class, and they could not believe that it was a 2-day course and that we're doing everything correctly. They couldn't believe that many people were getting ham radios in one location. So they
Yeah.
sent a secret agent.
You guys passed. That's awesome.
Yeah, we did. We passed the audition. So Glenn, so the Rubicon Trails Foundation, one of our financial obligations that we do is about roughly $20,000 a year for a mid-trail staff. That is Glenn White. You can see Glenn White in they're Aussies. They did the trail last summer. They're called 24/7 four-wheel drive, or four-wheel drive 24/7, I think. They did a video on the Rubicon Trail and they interviewed Glenn. Glenn is mid-trail staff, and he gives out oil spill bottles of BioCleanse for putting on oil spills. It's a bacteria that we give out for free. We give
Yep.
out hundreds and hundreds of bottles.
Yep. I've got a couple bottles.
We also sell it on the website. So if you don't see Glenn and you want one, you can get one. But if you see Glenn on the trail, you get one for free. Glenn goes down and he does his rounds at Buck Island because there's so many people, and it's a stir stick, and he actually knocks it down and resupplies the supplies and everything. And he's probably calling probably John to let him know that he needs, or hey, let the county know we're out of toilet paper or something.
Yeah. So who knows, the monitor, he could be on the radio calling back to maybe somebody at the property, or just checking in. He could be checking in literally to his wife in Sacramento, from there.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's cool.
Exactly.
Yeah, very cool. So how many of those trail monitors, they're probably not called that, but how many volunteers do you have monitoring the trail?
We call it mid-trail staff, and it's actually a paid position. It's a contractor, so we 1099 them. Glenn does so going back in time, if you're at Little Sluice, on your left-hand side, you'll see a picnic bench there. That's where Merlin was a mid-trail staff for 10 years, and that's called his office. Well, Glenn does it at the top of Indian Slabs, and there's a tree there, and he calls it his office, that tree there where he parks, and he talks to all the users there.
Okay.
But he's there, and then this year we're going to try to have somebody part-time closer towards Loon Lake, part-time on weekends for like that core July and August. So we're
the Jeep that I can recall is an older CJ stretched, kind of like half part gray and part light blue, older kind of beat up. Looks like it's had seen many miles on the Rubicon. So
a lot of rigs.
Yeah, that meet that description. So when you leave, so when you leave Buck Island, as you're leaving and you're looking down to the right, there's actually a tree up there that I always, my cell phone starts dinging. So there is a cell service spot that every year my cell phone starts hitting somebody.
Interesting. There's one at the benchmark too. The benchmark is actually a U.S. Geological Survey marker that probably people drive by all the time. It's literally right next to the trail. That's cell phone tree on that one. I didn't know about one at Buck Island at all.
Yeah.
There was one there.
So after leaving there, then you get to Big Sluice, and Big Sluice used to be. It's still a little bit of a challenge, but over the years they started. I don't know why, but they started clearing that out as well, making it a little bit easier. At one time, they were bringing equipment up and through there.
So the main part that they needed the equipment there for was, if you're an old timer, Scout Hole, and that's the water that's at the bottom of Big Sluice. There's a spring down there, and for years that was like 2 feet deep of water perpetually. It never dries out because it's fed by a spring. But in the 70s and 80s, there was a old Scout on its side that you drove by, and that's how it got its name, Scout Hole. And so yeah, they what they did is they did some redirecting to get the water from there to actually leave and go, so that the trail what didn't have water. So that's why that was done. Yeah, because you
Yeah,
needed to.
water is a big issue on the Rubicon Trail because
It
for exactly what you just mentioned earlier was that all that water drains down into those lakes, and those lakes eventually
Yep.
make it to the delta. So now you get to the Rubicon Springs, and what a beautiful, beautiful location. And now, how many people own the Rubicon Springs?
That's a complicated question. It's a partnership. It's actually called Rubicon Soda Springs Incorporated. Uh, I believe the original when Mark bought it, and that's actually when Mark bought it. That's one of the reasons that I am on the board currently today, is because of that. Which, if you want to tell that story later, I can. But I believe there were 18 original ones. I do not know how many there are now, but I'd say there's probably at least 12 or 13, probably, over the years. A lot of the OG ones have passed away, like Steve Morris. So,
Yeah. So there is a retired CHP officer and his wife that are caretakers there, live in the cabin. Is that still true?
yep, that's Mark and Maria, and they are actually part owners of Rubicon Springs. So they are
Okay.
one of the partners. Yeah, and they're
Great, great
caretakers
people.
there.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
I love hanging out with Maria. And actually, if you go to the cabin, there's a sign there that says Maria's Island. That was a gift by my girlfriend Emily, that she made for Maria there, for all the things that they've done for, just being there for us over the years, and just being a nice break to stop and say hello, when you're down there.
So one of my most special memories of being at Rubicon Springs, and I've been there many times over the years, was the year that I was able to come in. I was invited to come in, and I came in with my 53 Willys, and I came in for the Marlin crawl. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. And Marlon didn't know that I was coming in because I live right next to Fresno, known Marlon and Christine and the family for many years. And
Hmm.
so I came in with Butch, one of Marlon's very dear friends, and Alan and all his other close friends, and sat up in the back where the committee is and hid out, and then surprised Marlon that I was there. And what an amazing weekend. So when we think of and talk about influencers and who's been a major asset to the Rubicon, and everybody I'm sure listening to this video and stuff knows that we lost Marlon last year. His memorial service is going to be in Clovis on June 1st. But what kind of an impact has Marlon and his wife and family has on not just the Rubicon Trail, but and then also for the Rubicon Trail Foundation.
It's almost incalculable. um, Marlon, I mentioned Panamint Trail earlier. That was Marlon's favorite trail, and Marlon lost his favorite trail because of, a closure. And he decided that the Rubicon Trail was going to be something that he was going to make sure did not also happen. Without Marlin Crawler, the foundation does not own the property that we currently have. Yeah, fundraisers are great, and they've been big deal, but that was $300,000 roughly to buy that back in 2010, when we didn't even have that in the bank. So, without Marlon's money coming in on a regular basis over the years, it's made a huge difference to the foundation. It's, like I said, it's incalculable. So last year, RTF actually didn't run the trip, but we did all of the registration. We took the registration away from Christine and Big Mike. We bought all the food. We bought Edwin and the Slow Town Crawlers along with Butch. Um, Cooked the food for everybody in a pounding rainstorm. It was pretty crazy. Um, but if you've ever been to a Marlin Crawler and watched Marlin basically kiss babies and sign
Yep,
autographs at the food
yep.
line, So we decided that it was going to be a missing man ticket taker. So they parked Marlon's red Toyota truck there, and there was no ticket taker for food. I don't know if we're going to do Marlin Crawler again. That's up to Big Mike and Christina. But I told Mike, we're going to have it. We're going to do it. We'll figure out how to help you out and make this happen. And we did, because we knew there were so many people that wanted to say goodbye to Marlin there at Marlin
Yeah.
Crawler, where kind of it all started. So we did. So we'll see what happens in 2024.
Yeah, when I arrived there and I wanted to go find Marlin, one of Butch and Bird Dog, he goes by Bird Dog, but it's John and John Laval and Alan and all of our close friends said, you need to understand that Marlin, when he's here, he's the rock star, and he does exactly that.
Yes.
Is shaking hands and kissing babies. Everybody that comes wants to see him and talk to him. He goes, so you're going to see something. They told me, Mike, you're going to see something that you've never seen before. And it
100%.
was amazing. It was such an amazing weekend. I was so honored to be there and to be able to watch Marlin stand there and take tickets. And then he was the very last person to get his food and sit
Yeah.
down and eat.
Yeah.
Um,
I my first trip, they said, hey, we need somebody to go from the foundation, because they're going to give the money from the raffle and all that stuff, and say a few words. And I had been on the foundation for, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years. I felt like not worthy.
yeah,
And I get there, and of course I think I'd met Marlon like once or twice before, but he didn't know who I was. And so I tracked him down, and I said, hey Marlon, I'm here from the Rubicon Trail Foundation. And he goes, Ken, come on over. You want to do tickets with me? You can I'll get the ticket, and you can hand them their plate. And I said, yeah, sure, no problem. Okay, like any other food line at any other wheeling event. No, that's
right.
not what happened.
Yeah,
Photographs are being taken, signing foreheads like Ricky Bobby. I
yeah.
mean, it was nothing like I expected. And when I got done that next year, I think we had decided to give Christina and Marlon the Rock Award for lifetime achievement
I remember
of the
that.
Rubicon.
Yeah,
And I asked the board, I said, I wasn't the president, I wasn't anybody, I was just a director. And I said, I really want to tell the story, because it moved me so much how much all the people there cared
yeah,
about him.
yeah,
And so that's why it meant a lot to me to at least hold the event last year after Marlon's passing, to make sure that people could do that. But it's not, you can't replicate that. Nobody can.
yeah. When people would come up and meet him and talk about how amazing it is that they get to meet him in person and shake his hand, he's just like, thank you. Thank you for just taking the time to come and be here. And I appreciate you saying those kind words. You're so nice. And he would just always be, he would give grace back so much to everybody that would walk up and talk to him and meet him. And um, such an amazing man. And that
Yeah.
trip, he asked me, he goes, do you want to go up to this parking lot in the sky up the hill here? And I want to show you something, Mike. And I said, okay. He goes, leave your willies here, jump in the Toyota, and I'm going to take you. So I jumped in the Toyota, and we drove up out of camp. And as we were going, he came across a couple of kids that had some dirt bikes. And he goes, do you guys need help? And the kid's like, yeah, our dirt bike broke and I can't get the dirt bike out. And he goes, well, throw it in the back of my truck and I'll take you out. And the guy's like, oh, no, I can't do that. No, seriously, just throw it in the back. And he goes, no, I'm way up at the parking lot. And he goes, I'll take you to the parking lot. We weren't planning on going to the parking lot all the way to the parking lot, like where their vehicles were. So we threw the motorcycle in the back of the truck. The kid jumped in the back to hold on to it and hold on to his roll bar. Marlon and I took him all the way up to his truck, unloaded. The guy was so nice, so thankful. We come back down, we get down Cadillac Hill, we come to the parking lot. Go, well, this is the parking lot I was going to, take you to. And so we're sitting there talking, and he goes, "Do you want to drive my little red truck back to Rubicon Springs?" And I was just like, Oh, I didn't know what to say. I was just like, what? He goes, yeah, do you want to drive it? And I was like, oh man. And I was like, no, it's okay, Marlon. I think it's great just riding with you. I'll just ride with you. I like just watching you drive this thing. And I always think back to that decision. It's like, man, I wish I would have just jumped in behind the wheel. I should have drove it, but I did
You
not.
should have drove
So
it. You should
I
have drove
know,
it.
I know. I kick myself all the time. So once you leave Rubicon Springs, um, the infamous everybody hears about Cadillac Hill. So set the record straight, Ken. Was it really a Cadillac that went off the trail?
It was really a Cadillac. We know for sure now. And I'll tell you how we know for sure because I have met a gentleman. His name is Ken Magri, and he came to Black Tie and Boots. And his father, Armando, was the Harley dealer in Sacramento back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And when he was a young lad in 1940, he took him and his and five other buddies. They took Harley Davidsons, 500-pound motorcycles through what then was called Rubicon Canyon. It didn't have the name Rubicon Trail yet, and they went through the trail on their motorcycles. Ken has given me 9 high resolution scans of that, and I'm sure you have some B-roll going because I'll give you the picture to look at. But they were on Cadillac Hill and they actually siphoned gas from the Cadillac that's there on Cadillac Hill. So we actually have a photograph of it, and we know for sure it is a Cadillac, 100%. No
All right.
debating now.
No debating it. Over the
Nope.
years, there's been a lot of effort to keep Cadillac Hill intact. I
Yeah.
remember seeing cyclone fences wired down to just to keep the hillside. How's all those efforts going in keeping it stable?
Overall, excellent because Cadillac Hill is a problem in terms of Steve Morris, who recently passed away. Steve Morris, it's Morris Rock, is the last rock at the top that you pass through. It's named after him.
Yep.
Um, I was talking to him one day, and his best guess is that the trail is about 10 feet lower than it was when he first did it. He says it's gone down quite a bit, like just wear and tear, sloughing off the side, slowly working its way down, and that's what causes more and more rocks to become exposed, which of course have to be dealt with. So yeah, they've been helping a lot there, but there's actually a new section that has some issues not far from the Cadillac frame that will have to be looked at, soon. Not
So
immediately, but soon.
yeah. So we can talk about that. So yesterday was your Black Tie and Boots fundraiser.
Yep.
And so you made the announcement that there is some trail work that's going to need to be done there. Is it public
Yes.
now? Can you talk about it now that the Black Tie and Boots is done?
Yes, I can. So there is a video if you want to know more. It's on our channel. It went live Sunday morning today. Um, so in 2017, an engineer with the state, he actually came out and was doing some work. And I don't know who he was originally, whether it was for TNF or for Eldorado. I think it was Eldorado, but he looked at it, and everybody knows where it is if you've been on the trail. It's after Potato Patch, which is the last rock crawling section as you're headed out before you get to Miller Lake Road or Miller Creek Road. Um, when you pass the section, it's narrow, it's only single track, and on your right hand side, if you're leaving, there's Miller Creek. It's down about 80 feet. That is, it is sloughing off, and for environmental reasons, with water, with dirt and silt sediment filling up the creek, bad. Safety, obviously, if something were to happen and somebody was there, that would be bad. And then ultimately, if something happened and it fell, it could close the trail. Just so in 2019, El Dorado County came to the foundation and told us that they were going to be doing a planning grant to look into it. That planning grant has been completed. Tahoe National Forest did the NEPA. the bottom line is this road is going to be built to bypass this section of the trail, basically the last mile, and it'll be after Potato Patch. You'll be a left-hand turn, and then you'll come into Miller Road about 100 yards earlier than where it comes out now. So the Forest Service came to us and said, look, we can build a road. We build dirt roads all the time, but we know you guys don't want a dirt road.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah, which was awesome. So the foundation has passed a resolution in January. We are going to put out $250,000 to build this trail reroute. We couldn't have done it without all the supporters that go to the events. You go to our event. Obviously Marlin has donated a lot of money that we have in the bank, and it's a lot of money. We have to put that money out first because the excavation company is a wheeler, which is great. We're going to be building some features on the way out. Some rock crawling features are going to be added that aren't there now, so it's going to be new stuff. There will be a bypass because there are people that get to that point and they're just done. Which
Yeah.
I get. But if you're gun the hoe, there's going to be more stuff to go wheeling on.
Okay.
We'll be paying the excavation company throughout that project, and then once it's completed, they'll submit the grant, and then the forest will get reimbursed. They'll pay us. We'll pay the matching funds. So ultimately, out of pocket initially, we'll have about $250,000, but at the end of it, we'll have the matching funds somewhere around $50,000 to $70,000. Still not a paltry sum, by foundation status standards. So it's still a lot of money for us, but we're gonna pay for that.
Okay. Well, people in California, they heard it first right here from you, Ken.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so that's great.
Unless you're at Black Time Boots, Mike, you didn't hear it. You heard it here.
That's right. So so we had Black Time Boots fundraiser yesterday.
Yep.
I'm sure it's sold out. It always does. And then the other fundraisers, Cantina on the Con, and then Off the Rocks. And Cantina on the Con used to be in the Spillway right there at Loon Lake, but a few years ago it got moved down to like around Pullock Pines.
No, it got moved to Rob's Resort, and the reason that it was originally started by TDO, which is called the Dysfunctional Organization, and they started the cantina. The first cantina raised $5,000 was the first cantina. They ran it for many years, and then the foundation took over. It just got so big they couldn't do it anymore. I think the most we've ever made at the net, it was around $60,000, and that was the year we gave away a truck. That was part of the event. But first, the first year it was canceled was the Forest Service was doing work on the campground right there, the North Campground, and they wanted no parking from the bottom of a week or 2 weeks before the event. They asked us, hey, you can't have any parking from the kiosk all the way up to the top of the dam, all the way back a mile and a half down the road. You can't have any parking. And we just didn't have the manpower allocated to be able to handle something like that. You have to have a lot of people to keep people from parking incorrectly. And secondly, we just didn't want everybody mad at us because all the parking was being allocated for Cantina for the Con and nobody could actually go wheeling. So we just made the call to cancel it. I think that was 2019. Then the next year was COVID, so that was canceled.
Yeah.
And then the following year, we couldn't get a permit. The Forest Service wouldn't give us a permit for the event in that area again. And so fortunately, Rob's Resort, which a lot of people remember, it's only about 7 miles from the kiosk. They have built-in barbecues, misters. We have bands playing there while they're there. It's flat, and you're not walking on rocks all crookedy, all day long. They have a bar, so it's a much more pleasant experience. It's still close to the trail. If you want to stop by, go do your thing. It's only a 1-day event now. It used to be a 2-day event. but it's still a big fundraiser for us, selling tacos, of
I was
course.
gonna say
Tom,
tacos, and ice cream.
yes, Tom Allgaier is the taco king. He is the grill master that's in charge of all the tacos. Yeah, he's amazing. And then the other event is Off the Rocks, and we do a small raffle. It's mostly a at the end of the season in October. We do it at the Dry Diggins distillery that makes Rubicon whiskey, and we do it right there in their parking lot, and we just do it for people to show off their rigs and basically say goodbye to the summer. It's not we don't. I mean, I think we make like $4,000 off the event. I mean, I won't lie, we make a little money, but that's
Yeah,
not the purpose of this. It's just basically for everybody to move on to the wintertime.
gotcha,
So
gotcha.
yeah.
So how can people help outside of these three fundraisers? So if they're not able to make it up there, but they come from other areas in California a couple times a year
Yeah.
uh, to use the Rubicon, they're probably thinking, well, we should give back and we should help out the Rubicon Trail Foundation. I know you have a
Yeah.
website, and so how can people contribute?
Yeah, it's rubicontrailfoundation.org is the website. Obviously, you can do a direct donation through PayPal. We also have some merch that we sell that you can, purchase some Rubicon Trail Foundation merchandise as a way to give, support the foundation and at least get a shirt back or something thereabouts. And then the other thing is if you're interested, our meetings are on Zoom. The information is on our website. They're open to the public in terms of, there's not enough room for the public to come in to the actual meeting. It's not that big of a place that we do it. We get a location from the Marshall Foundation. Shout out to my old elementary school classmate, Siri, who is the administrator for Marshall Foundation, who lets us have the meetings there. Um,
The name is Siri.
Her name is Siri, yeah, for real. And her sister,
Oh,
who has passed away, it was Siggy. I don't know the background
so if they
between
have
those names.
so if they have a device in their home, every time you say her name, the device would say, "Yes, how can I help you?" Everybody understands.
I haven't asked her about that, but I'm sure it comes up from time to time. But our meetings are on Zoom, so if you want to jump
Okay.
on a Zoom and just hear what's going on, you're more than welcome to join in on a Zoom and listen in on what we have going on.
All right.
Most of them aren't super exciting, and definitely not every meeting we vote for $250,000 to be spent on the
Great.
Rubicon Trail.
All right. Well, anything else you want the viewers or listeners to know before we end the interview?
I just everybody to enjoy it. And you said earlier about people all over the world. I was actually on the trail and I ran into a group around Buck Island Lake. And when I'm on the trail, I always try to stop and make sure that everybody's okay because I have a ham radio and call parts and all that stuff. And I saw them and I said, "Hey, you guys okay?" And they had a funny accent. And they said, "Oh, we're fine." And I was like, "Whoa, where are you guys from?" And they said, "Oh, we're from Norway." And I was like, "What?" And they said, "Yeah, we shipped our Jeeps in a container all the way from Norway to New York City. We put the Jeeps back together and we drove all the way across the United States." So if you ever want to know what the Rubicon Trail means to people, that's the story you want to leave
Wow,
with, is that's what it means to people. And that's
man.
why I am on the foundation, because yeah, you can either watch stuff happen, you can make stuff happen, or you can wonder what the hell happened. And I'm never want to be in the position of whatever, of
Yeah.
that position. So
Well, thanks, Ken. I appreciate you and all the work that you do for the foundation and for the Rubicon. And
yeah, thanks.
thank you for being on the show with Talking Off Road with McGarity.
Yeah, it's great. And my position, I get to meet people, and we have become friends throughout our time for our advocacy for off-roading, which is wonderful to meet people who care as much. So thank you so much for bringing me on.
All right. Have a great day.